Loud It Podcast.
Hello, Ankedu. Welcome back to another episode of Loud It Podcast. I am Nedensa, and this past week has been quite different for myself. So I've been a lot more consistent on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and I think the algorithm has been working in my favor a little bit. One of my videos on TikTok actually reached 15,000 views, or over 15,000. I have now mustered up near 100 followers on TikTok just from that one video and like the responses I got, and I created another video. Basically, I did clips. I created clips from the last episode where I was talking more so about the job market, and of course I gave ideas and tips for jobs above 70k in general. And someone responded in the comments asking, she said she's autistic and what are jobs, low profile, high paying jobs that are above 70k but do not rely so heavily on maths, so mathematics skills basically. And so I created a follow-up response to that, and that also was well received. And yeah, I was just like, okay, so this whole consistency thing, we'll get there. And speaking on that, there's a few more followers onto the YouTube channel for Loud It Podcast, so hey, and there's more followers actually for the Spotify account too, so welcome on board. Happy to have you here. I think in the future I'll do another reintroduction into myself as new people start finding the platform through, I guess, now the video content. So if you don't know, I have been doing the podcast for 5 years now. People who have been listening for some time, they're already aware. But essentially I've been doing it for 5 years and decided April of this year, during the 5th anniversary, that I would try doing more video content. Not more, I would try doing video content, full stop. I haven't done video content before, so yeah, basically it's just jumping onto the bandwagon, which has since left me a while ago. But yes, it's a bit crazy, a bit strange putting my face out there, but hi, anyway, lovely to see you, or for you to see me. You'll learn soon enough that I talk a lot of rubbish on here, but some things make sense, which is why I assume people come back. Anyways, as mentioned, I've been talking more about the job market last week, and I decided let's talk a little bit more about the corporate world firstly. This will just be the first 5-10 minutes of this episode. I started thinking, in the corporate world, you actually see a lot of different personalities, and they show up in different ways. You see the bedroom kids versus the living room kids. You see more so those who have been born here and raised here versus those who have moved here, those who weren't born here and have moved here at a certain point in their lives. You see the difference actually in the way people move. You see, you see firstborn versus lastborn. You see the difference there in the office, and you just see different dynamics. But let's unpack more so the bedroom kids versus the living room kids. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean just imagine you are, what age will I say? Let's just say a random, okay? You're 13 years old. No, let's go younger. You're 8 years old. You're going home from school. So you've just had a long day at school. Long day. How can it be long when you're 8? But you get the point. You had a long day at school. You've come home, and the first thing you do is you walk through the door and you basically go to your room straight away, and you're chilling there for as long as you can. Versus the other kids who I describe as the living room kids, or the parlor kids. I don't know how growing up, we used to call it the parlor when I lived in Nigeria anyway, early years here. I don't know when we converted to saying living room. At some point it was sitting room, different things. But anywho, the living room kids who come home and they drop their stuff on the floor in the living room and they sit on the sofa and they're just now talking to their family, debating, etc. So you see this sort of dynamic play out in the workplace in terms of how comfortable people are being in disagreement, because you don't always agree with ideas, as in work ideas, not butting heads personally in the workplace, but yeah, work ideas. And you see how people actually take that on board and how they understand and go through such conflict. And I'm just there like, does this stem from you being a bedroom kid where you were more so, you kind of more isolated yourself in your room. You felt comfortable more within your own bubble. And when you came out of the room to speak to your family, you were asking more so for permission. You were asking for permission to speak. Hey, like, huh? Not hey. Imagine, hey, mom. Okay, maybe the Westerners do that. As a Nigerian, no. But yeah, you come downstairs and you're like, may I speak? May I do this? Whereas the living room kids might just be like, I'm gonna do this, and that's it. And that's final. So I don't know. I see the difference. And of course education plays a factor into this as well, because if you sometimes have gone to private schools where this sort of debate culture is fostered, then that also plays out. But I'm just going to stick to what the home environment is, because I didn't go to private school. So I'm only assuming what things happen there because of people I've met in life, like people I'm close to or people I've worked with, etc., who have gone to private school and they've told me their experiences. And I can see the difference between myself, who went to, as they describe, a state school. I went to a Catholic all-girls school. I've never heard myself or described myself as having gone to a state school, but that's something they say. I've heard that more in the US, but apparently that's what some people say here too. I'm trying to get my head around it, but I guess it makes sense, I think. I don't know. But yeah, you can see the difference, anywho, when it comes to how people are clearly brought up and how they see themselves in comparison to others in the workplace. It plays out in broad daylight. And when I say it plays out in broad daylight, I see myself falling into certain stereotypes as well. I'm just like, whoa, okay, in my mind that's not me, but clearly that's how I'm responding in this scenario. I'm sometimes more bold, I'm sometimes more timid. And those who know me personally, I am not a shy person. So if you see me a bit more timid, you just know, like, I'm trying to calculate things. And so then it made me think, am I a bedroom kid or am I a living room kid? And I think I'm more so in between. And you know what? At some point, I need to have my siblings on here, because we're a family with 3 children. I'm the last born. We have the firstborn and the middle child. And I think in certain scenarios, I act more so like the middle child, the stereotypical middle child. And I'm just there like, okay, that plus the fact that because I was the last born, but there was an age gap, so therefore I was doing more things in my room as well. But then I also love my family debates, so therefore I was more of a living room child from my definition and understanding, yeah, from that perspective. So I have this balance between the two, and sometimes one shows up more than the other. And you can see it in the workplace. And so when I see other people doing things where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's maybe what I would naturally do too, I'm just like, is this a trait of a living room kid? Am I showing this, like, I want to be the show star? I want to be this performer. When I say performer, sometimes I mean it in a positive way, sometimes I mean a show monkey. So it depends on how you see it. Different scenarios, it shows up in different ways. And bedroom kids, I don't also mean that in a completely negative light either, because bedroom kids, I see it as you are hyper aware. And sometimes being hyper aware can be painful. Can be painful because you are sometimes dimming your own self to help others, like, showcase themselves in the best possible light. So yeah, what are you guys? I want to know, would you describe yourself more as a bedroom kid or a living room kid? And then where do you fall, or where do you sit in your family? Because I think those two together, intertwined, makes a big difference in how you show up in the office, how you show up in corporate world anyway. I don't really know so much about the content creator world, but yeah, the corporate world, I think it shows up because I've seen different personalities and I'm just like, I think I know a little bit of how you were as a kid. Or maybe you've changed. Maybe something's drastically changed the way you move. But let me know in the comments or DM me directly. I still have, of course, the Instagram account, so DMs are open there. No one's ever DM'd me on TikTok yet. I don't really know how that world works, if I'm honest. But if you want to, sure, I guess I'll see it. I don't have notifications on for TikTok. It's the one app where I think there are too many notifications. I need to plug and play. So Instagram, I have notifications. So if you want to DM me, I would suggest Instagram. If it's TikTok, you might get a late response. I'm gonna say it here first. But yeah, so I wanted to discuss that firstly anyway, because corporate world, you just see so many personalities, and it's quite cool actually when you think about it. You learn different things, different skill sets, and you're sometimes unlearning your own behaviors too. But other times you're trying to help other people unlearn their behaviors, because not everybody was raised in a sensible manner, at least from stories I hear. And yeah, stories I stumble upon on the internet too. I'm just like, whoa, not everybody is normal, but it's okay, I guess. Somebody will have to manage that. But okay, cool. Now, we are moving to almost 2 years of my husband and I owning our first home. Now, what does that mean? That means remortgaging is coming up. We have never done this whole remortgaging process, and I thank God that we have a mortgage advisor. I cannot stress to you enough, if you are not the type to go into the nitty-gritty, getting a mortgage advisor to help you sift through, at least maybe it's because of my husband and I's situation where he's still on the spouse visa at the moment, and so that changes our scenario. Yeah, so maybe it's that, actually. Yeah, maybe if you're not that, then look into it yourself and you might find really good rates. But if you don't plan on doing that work, go and get yourself a mortgage advisor. They will make your life so much easier. But yeah, so we're going through that, and it made me think, we are so lucky to have bought a house when we did, because the stamp duty, the rise in stamp duty, you know what, give me a second, because I can give you facts. So if you were to buy a house in 2026 versus a house, because we bought our house in summer of 2024, right? And we did the 2-year mortgage, yada, 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 hence why it's coming to the end of the 2 years now. But we bought a house then, and now comparing to that exact same, like the same details being like same house price. Let's imagine I'm buying the same house price with my husband this year, this summer. You will scream, because I screamed, scrammed, and scrunched. I don't even know what English I'm speaking at this point, but I was screaming to the high heavens when I realized how lucky we were. So at the time, I'll just give you 2 figures. At the time, for stamp duty, we paid somewhere around £6,000. If we were to buy this exact same house in summer of 2026, we would be paying £16,850 in stamp duty alone. Do you hear the silence in the room? I'm sorry for the for the audio listeners. That silence is me trying to understand why and how. Quite frankly, just how. How have we got there? I'm only laughing out of pure shock. I would understand in this current day and age if people did not want to buy a house. I would understand, just quite frankly, down to stamp duty, if people prefer to rent in this current market of 2026. I understand if people say it's not worth it. I understand if people choose to actually go for an investment property rather than a house to live in. Because the idea being, yes, you still have to pay stamp duty, yada, 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 but then at least you then have, you know, lodgers, people paying rent, so you're covering something again. But if you're planning to live there, therefore bearing all the costs and not going to get money back in some kind of way, I understand if you don't want to right now. Fully get it. Let me help you understand why. In 2024, the rule was, what was it? Come on now. The rule was, here we go. So for purchase prices for first-time buyers up until whenever it changed, for first-time buyers, the first £250,000 of your property you paid no stamp duty on. Then from £250,000 up until £925,000, you then had to pay 5% of stamp duty. And then from £925,000 upwards, up until 1.5 million, you paid 10%, and 1.5 million pounds plus, you pay 12% of stamp duty. So that meant for the house that I currently live in, we paid just short of £6,000, thereabouts, right? Now, for this exact same house, the rule has changed. As of 2026, first-time buyers purchasing properties which are more than £500,000 are not eligible for the relief, and therefore they pay the stamp duty at the standard rates. So my house was above that amount, not too much over, but above that amount. And the standard rates have now become from £0 to £125,000, you pay 0%. Then from £125,000 up until £250,000, which was before, you'll pay 0, right? Now you pay 2%. Then from £250,000 up until £925,000, you pay 5%. And then the other two basically stayed the same. That now means you have an extra amount that has been added out of nowhere. That 2% adds a lot in itself. When you marry them together, you get over £16,000 versus the £6,000 that it was before. Over £10,000 more is what you're paying now. This is why people don't want to buy a house. I finally understand why people are choosing to rent. Because sometimes I question, I'm like, but it's the same amount that you're using to pay someone else's mortgage. But it's not just the mortgage you're thinking about. You're thinking about the stamp duty. So it makes so much sense. Because yes, there's stamp duty. Then you have to think of all the other surveying of the house. You have to pay like solicitors. There's so many other expenses. And if you want to go through, like, I gave some tips and tricks to do with the house hunting, house buying process in like episode 171, if I remember correctly, episode 171. I went through the tips and tricks because it was soon after we had closed and got the keys. Have a look at that if you want to hear tips and tricks in terms of buying a home. But if you're put off in the current market, honestly, it makes sense. And it's quite sad. You're saying that you're trying to help first-time buyers on one hand, but then on the other hand, you're making it so difficult. You're making it so tricky that first-time buyers can't afford. Yeah. So it's not really adding up. The government doesn't make sense. Yeah. So that's the update on stamp duty anyway. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about actually this episode. Do I want to talk about it this episode? Yeah, let's go for it. Deadbeat dads, deadbeat mums, deadbeat parents, full stop. Can you be a deadbeat grandparent? Not really. You didn't ask that child to come. Yeah, let's go for deadbeat parents. Anyway, I've been seeing this whole thing where, you know, of course, if like you're together, you have a child, you split up, and then there's child support. Now, I don't like the deadbeats in the child support situation where they are paying the bare minimum, but they can afford a lot more. Now, if you're paying, you know, what the court has said that you should pay, but that's what you can afford, I'm not talking about you guys. You guys are not the deadbeats. You're not deadbeats. I'm talking about the people who can afford a lot more and choose not to. Those are the deadbeats. Because often you hear this whole rhetoric that the reason why they're not paying more, they don't want to add more to the child support, is because they don't want to fund their ex-partner's lifestyle. How does that make sense? More times, the amount that you have to pay for child support is peanuts. From what I hear, the figures I hear online, maybe I'm wrong, but the figures I hear online of people who are in these scenarios is usually they're paying very minimal amounts. And I'm just thinking, how can you even understand in your own brain, how does it make sense that your child is able to survive on that amount? And you're thinking, yeah, but the ex-partner is going to be spending it on themselves. No, because your money is not even getting your child school clothes. It's not even able to get your child meals, like on a daily basis. And you're saying, no, I'm not helping anymore because I've done what I need to do. I've done what the court said, but you can afford more. So instead, you want your child to now live less than what you can actually offer them. That's what you're saying. You're saying that you are intentionally giving your child less. If I don't, I am mad. I am actually I get so angry at this thought because the only person you're paining is your own child. Did you think this through when you came out with this whole mantra of no, they're going to be using that money for other things? When it's women involved, they're going to use that money to do their hair and their nails. More times that money doesn't even cut one session to get her nails done. And you think that's enough for your child. Okay. But why are you getting away with it, actually? Why are you getting away with it? Why is the system allowing this to happen? Because now it just means that the parent who stayed, the present parent, is going through a lot more when you could be helping. When you could be doing your own part. You could be pulling your own weight. But instead, you're just acting as if you've done everything you can. It's not on me. Suddenly, you've paid the maximum you could afford, but your lifestyle shows otherwise. How do you sleep at night? How do you go to bed feeling like you have done something? You've done well. Can you make that make sense to me? Maybe someone out there who's listening to this has some wise words to give me, because currently it's not really adding up. It's not adding up. I don't know why this is even a thing. You can afford more. Do your part. You brought the child into the world. The child didn't even ask to be here. You brought the child here. Do your part. Okay, I'm done shouting. If the shoe fits and you felt shaken, maybe you'll go and do your own parts now. But this is not just, like I said, it's not just deadbeat dads. I'm sure there are deadbeat mums somewhere. I just hear more of the deadbeat dads. Let's be real. I'm going to be honest with you. That's the ones I hear online. But mainly because oftentimes it's the mother that stays. And I don't like how you get this whole, like, when kids start growing up, the person they resent is the parent that stayed, and they feel the longing for the parent who never showed up. It's painful for the child because I fully get it. I would also probably feel a longing as well. I fully understand that mindset, but it's painful for the parent who did stay and did the best they could. And yeah, and then in the end, it's like, oh, sometimes it feels like it wasn't quite enough. I can't imagine how that feels entirely, of course, but I can only imagine like the pain it feels in those sorts of scenarios. But just remember, you've done your best. You are doing, and in the future, you have done your best. So just remember that you can only do what you can. And if you're a deadbeat, go and do your job. Go and do your job. Okay, but thank you guys as always so much for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Spotify. Leave me a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave comments there. And then, yeah, follow the new social medias, i.e. TikTok, Loud It Podcast, currently with an underscore. In the future, there will not be an underscore. And Loud It Podcast on Instagram as well. But yes, I'll speak to you next week, Monday, as always. Bye!